Welcome to our space where talking about the inspiring things with inspiring people is what inspires us. Waiting for you here are the infinite possibilities that creation, collaboration, and connection have to offer. A universe where we see everything through rose-tinted spectacles that help us to keep our faith in the power of imagination alive and well. And now, let's talk. Welcome to Metralla Rosa. Today I have the huge pleasure of introducing Adele Brydges, a ceramic artist, someone that believes in the power of using feminine sensuality to open doors and windows and explore creativity. Someone that creates workshops that allows you to create your own beautiful ecological sex toy, mainly dildos and spurs. And Adele also believes that art can be therapy, that pleasure can be healing, and sex can be sacred. These principles very close to both my heart and my mind. Her workshops in London awaken that inner, joyful, creative self that should understand how pleasure and creativity are so interconnected. Thank you so much, Adele, for being with us. It's really something we wanted to do since ages ago, inviting you. I would like to ask you, it maybe seems a little bit obvious, but why do you think pleasure is so important these days to reveal, unleash some sort of power we all have?
I think it's a fundamental part of exploring our identity. And so often we're taught that we need to isolate these different parts of ourselves, that we can't fully be ourselves. But I think through exploring pleasure, we can really understand ourselves fully and more deeply, and then kind of meet other people in a way that we can really truly connect with one another. Does that make sense?
I don't know. Maybe we will spend a little bit of time in this, but I think it's important. We are two female trying to create something, and in a way or another exploring the same matters. And I would like to know your opinion, because we are so much in our heads. Sometimes that doesn't allow any real pleasure. It's more or less a constant worriness that we are creating, and we think that creating something comes from that space. But sometimes when we allow our bodies to take the predominance of the action, it's somehow, I don't know why, it feels more connected with the heart and less with the mind.
Heart-centered.
And that is such a relief, because the mind can be really a torture. It can be a torture.
It is for a lot of people. It is torturous. I mean, so many people during the pandemic, including myself, have really struggled with the kind of mind-body battle and trying to kind of regain that balance. And I think pleasure through kind of sensuality, and not necessarily kind of erotic pleasure, but just, you know, small mindful moments, you know, taking pleasure in, you know, noticing the fleeting kind of pattern of the shadow of leaves, you know, and light passing through the window. That's, for me, that's pleasure. It's not just in the erotic sense of the word, but it's something that you can build upon. So if you notice these small things in your everyday kind of in your everyday activities, I think it helps you kind of ground within yourself and close down and be more in the present and less in the mind.
I also, for example, when I relate to the person I am, I guess it happens to everyone. I'm talking about me just because it's the example I know better. When I just desire something with all my heart, all my mind, all my soul, I just want it. It's something possesses me and I go for it. Instead, when you analyze too much why this desire is playing a role, why do I want this, then things become a little bit more complicated.
Yeah.
But if I just live, I go to your workshop, for example, and I just say, okay, I like this and I want to do this, or I want to do one double of the size. Why do you want a double? I don't know, I just feel like I want the challenge. I don't know, anything that it's more enthusiastic and less preconceived and strategic and correct and polite always makes you feel like a little child. And childs are really creative. They are in constant state of creation.
Yeah, right?
Absolutely.
I think we kind of, as we grow older, we kind of numb ourselves out a little bit because we have to get by in this, I'm going to sound really Marxist now, but like this capitalist society that's, and everything's based on productivity and efficiency, and we kind of become these machines and we lose kind of connection with our emotions and our sensual selves. And I think creativity, and so I'm not sure which one comes first, creativity or sensuality. Either sensuality is the birthplace of creativity, or it could be just this endless kind of cycle.
Totally. Like, probably a spiral. Like feminine force it's not linear, they say. It's more like a spiral kind of energy.
Yeah, absolutely.
And why do you think also for women it's been, when women get in touch with that sense of sensuality, they are unstoppable, fearful and fierce. You can see it. But why is it so difficult to get there?
Because
get there, yeah.
I think
without feeling guilty.
There's so much pressure from society on how we need to perform, how we need to look, how we need to be. And it's really difficult to kind of unpick and unravel that and to embrace all of the power. And eroticism is power. There is power in the erotic. And I think that's what, potentially is the challenge to the patriarchy, this kind of feminine power. So we've been taught that we need to be smaller versions of ourselves.
Bonsai
versions. Macro or micro?
Micro women, micro beauties. Like, yes, you feel all the time that you are so close of being too much. And it's so shameful to be too much. Why? We shouldn't care.
But then there's this weird dichotomy, is that the right word? The Madonna whore kind of complex. So you have to be the virginal mother, but then you also have to be the kind of whore and the prostitute, and you just can't.
But you need to know when.
Exactly.
Be careful if you misunderstand.
You're always going to be too much on either end of the spectrum. So it feels like you're kind of treading this tightrope, I think, in society.
In your case, with your products, it feels to me like you have found a beautiful way to, without sacrificing any feminine input or essence, or without making any sacrifice in the way of you relate to tenderness or softness. You have also find a product that is a statement. It's a statement, for me, it's a statement of how powerful you are. Not us, you are, because this is your proposal to the world. This is what you are proposing to the world, is your art. And also, on top of that, you create opportunities to share this with others. So I really, really think you have created something incredibly beautiful. How do you feel, and how was your journey? Do you feel proud? Do you feel conscious of how wonderful this is?
I do. I mean, it's difficult when, as a creative and freelance, and I'm, making everything for myself. Everything is handmade by me in my workshop. So the pressure to create and then the kind of balance that over being able to kind of live a life in London is very challenging, and sometimes you kind of forget what you've accomplished. But I try and remind myself, if I ever kind of lose my way, of how much I have accomplished and where I've come from. I mean, I started this journey.
Please keep it very present, because it is overwhelmingly beautiful.
Thank you. You're gonna make me cry. It's been a challenge to get to this point, I think, and do it. I mean, for a long time, I was like, oh, I can't possibly do this full time. You know, I'd love to do it full time, but you know,
you were juggling with a
so
part-time job.
I did a ceramic design degree, and I mean, I'd started a collaboration with Coco de Mer at the point where I was kind of graduating university, so we were in conversation already then, and then I was working part-time developing a range of, I think we had 4 pieces in our initial collection, and then I was like, well, I need to pay the bills. I can't just have, you know,
fun.
I can't just make dildos for one collaboration. I need to have a plan B. So I was working in as a facilities assistant, managing some government sector buildings, and then I was doing, what else did I do there? IT infrastructure assistant, and then just basically, I'm the eldest of 7, so I'm quite good at organising other people.
Obviously.
So I just suddenly found myself in a role where I was project managing a big IT infrastructure program.
Wow.
Updating.
Sounds scary.
It's like, I'm, you know, and you're kind of like, how the hell did I end up here? I did a ceramic design degree. I've always wanted to do art, but I think it was and it was a very masculine environment as well. And I would go into some meetings and I was the only woman in a meeting of 14 people, 13 others were guys. And it really kind of, this felt like Jekyll and Hyde, because I'd go to my workshop in the evenings and weekends, and I would, you know, be making these really liberating kind of sex toys and pleasure tools, and then I would go to my day job and I would be the lead on a project, but like our subcontractor would give responses to my questions to my male counterpart. He wouldn't look me in the eyes and give me a response. It was like, because I was a woman, my leadership didn't count in that kind of area.
It is incredible.
So,
but it's very complementary. If you think about both things were kind of working together as a yin and yang kind of.
Yeah, there was a polarity
forces.
There, I guess.
Yes.
Except, I know the organisation that I worked for was never going to change. So, but then I had this kind of moment of realisation, and I thought, what the hell am I doing with my life? Why have I spent 7 years, you know, not shelving my passion, but keeping my passion so kind of part-time.
Secondary,
or like not giving it the importance it deserves, which, you know, for me, I think that sexuality and pleasure and sensuality, especially for women, is really important, because
not only that, you were creating your own business and your own yes, it was a brand. It's something.
I still feel a bit awkward when people call me a brand,
but
because it's so personal to me.
It can be a lovely brand. We have to also believe that world we believe is possible is only possible if people like you make the effort to every day working on believing and proving that it's possible. Yes. Yeah. It would be amazing if in the future people can work for you, and then you will be creating a real force. Not only a beautiful concept, but also a force.
A legacy.
Yes, a legacy and a dynamic economic force, which at the end of the day is what women also want.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So now you work 100%
myself
on your brand, which is Adele Brydges.
Which is terrifying.
It's terrifying, but it's also very challenging from a creative point of view, I guess.
It can be, especially when you're kind of treading that line where it's a very creative process, but it's very process driven and method driven as well. So it kind of pulls you back in. You're like, is this a product or is it a piece of art? I often kind of ask myself this. I have this kind of dialogue going on in my head. What do you
prefer? To look at your...
I feel referring to them as products makes them... I call them pieces usually, or tools, or people call them artifacts. I think artifacts makes them sound really antique, but I struggle with the word.
It's kind of vintage. It's a vintage word,
Yeah,
which is also good for your product.
I do struggle with the word product, I think, because it sounds so sterile, and they're not, and so much. I mean, it takes pretty much a day to make a piece, so it's quite a lengthy process, and it's also for me, I don't know, this sounds really wooey, but there is an element of spirituality or soulfulness in the process for me, and they say the hands are the agents of the heart, don't they? So, using your hands, and it's kind of like an energetic exchange, and then when someone buys one of my pieces, that's, there's an exchange of energy that's taken place, not just money.
And when the first dildo came out and you made it, first it was probably an idea, then you made it, and then how was the process to understand, I want to do these things, I found meaning in these tools, pieces of art or products, whatever people prefers to call them, and I also want to get people to experience the same, and I'm gonna be somehow how do you consider yourself in the process of helping others to make them their own
so
toys?
With the workshops, people will come along and they'll decorate pieces that I've pre-made, so like this piece, which is like a collage of different enamel decals and prints.
It looks very like old school tattoos, but also very Japanese.
Yeah.
Is that the inspiration?
Yeah. So there's some like shunga inspired illustrations in here, and bound hands.
It's lovely. It's like a nude. No, is it a nude?
That's the is it the fisherman's wife? So there's the woman there with being pleasured by an octopus.
Okay. Wow. It's this, for example, this is an option. I could go to your workshop, choose a piece you have.
So it's just these two styles at the moment, and then this larger plug also comes in plain glazed style as well, because you need this glaze for enamel. Enamel is like ground glass, and when you put it onto the glazed piece and then you fire it again, it kind of melts into the surface and becomes the glass. It melts into the glaze. It integrates. Does that make sense?
And it always is it 100% safe, or sometimes it goes wrong?
So like you can see here, it depends how you layer the prints. So this has had a bit of a reaction here. You can feel this texture. It's a bit like, I don't know whether you ever had, your grandmother had frosted sherry glasses. You know, the texture around the edge at the top with the colour. So that...
Is that on purpose, or that was a mistake?
That was by accident. Okay. But I mean, some people see that as like an addition to the... It's a happy accident.
Of course,
texture, but it depends on who...
But do you consider yourself a facilitator, a tutor?
Struggle with all the leadership terms.
Yeah,
I guess probably a facilitator, I would say. So it took a long time to get to the point where I was running the workshops. I kind of almost had to come to terms with, or accept what I was doing myself, that there was an importance, there was a real value in it. And then when I got to that point, I think it was 2017, I started running workshops, which was a big deal for me because it's such an intimate act for me. I don't know, that I'm so personal that inviting people into my workshop space to do it was, I used to get so anxious about it.
You actually wrote somewhere in your Instagram that for you, your studio was a sanctuary. And I love that. That sense of sacred. It's something we have to reconnect with as well. As much as we need to reconnect with our power and right to feel pleasure and to find the answers through experiencing pleasure, we also need to, I feel, it's my very intimate belief, I think we have the right to feel something is sacred just because we decided
reverence for it. Yeah,
like that's spirituality, to give to an experience or a thing a meaning that then that meaning doesn't have to be for everyone, but for you it is like that.
And to understand the energetic exchange there as well, that like I wish when I was growing up, I was brought up in an Irish Catholic background, so like this was a big deal. My grandmother never knew.
No,
like she knew that I did ceramics, but she never knew that I made sex toys.
Wow, maybe she would have been.
I don't think so.
You know, at certain age, you really release so many dogmatic behaviors.
I think she would have eventually kind of reconciled with the fact that they're beautiful objects as well. Yeah, and they were inspired by.
It's undeniable.
Yeah. So I was. This kind of feeds into. I think you had kind of mentioned before. Where does my inspiration come from? My grandmother used to have this. She used to collect ceramics, and she had a collection of like there was one wall in her kitchen which was just filled almost floor to ceiling, the whole space, with plates that were. She didn't have them to eat off, they were to look at because she thought they were beautiful items in there, despite them being utilitarian.
Yes.
And,
she just had them as a beautiful object.
Yeah, like
on
artworks.
Display. Yeah.
And then she also had, my grandfather was a builder and he'd done some work in a convent and they were going to throw out this massive glass dresser, really, really dark wood, very ornate, kind of Edwardian looking. And it was filled to the brim with antique jugs and all different styles, all different eras, and really ornate to really understated. And I just used to marvel at this cabinet.
That's amazing, the connection you have with the with this memory, this childhood memory.
Material. Yeah.
It is beautiful. And from there, do you think it came, the desire of working with it? Or are you sure?
I think it was so. Originally, when I went to art college, I thought I wanted to do fine art, and then I was like, actually, I like making things that people can interact with.
And three-dimensional.
Three-dimensional. So I specialised in three-dimensional design initially, and then I applied to do jewellery because I liked the fact that you could interact with these objects. But then I had the opportunity. It wasn't like a major part of the course. You could stay behind late to do ceramics if you wanted to. It was like the dirty kind of secret or something like that.
I know.
And it wasn't given that much kind of airspace on the syllabus at college. But I stayed one evening and I was like, oh my God. Scrap all of those university applications that I've done previously. Like I'd already applied and got 3 offers of doing jewellery elsewhere. It's like this. I need to explore ceramics, and so that's where the love affair with the physicality of this. You know, something that's quite primitive, can be so many things, not just to me but to so many other people as well.
It's not the first time I listened this kind of a revelation, because the first time you put your hands on it, there's a Korean artist that we interview in Metralla Rosa. She said exactly the same. She was working in fashion, never did anything with ceramics, really? But Korea is like a big country producing beautiful antique ceramics. And she said that here in England, the first time she tried, it was like, this is it. I think in another life I was doing this thing or something, because I don't know if the fact that it's so ancient, but also the fire and earthy element, the fiery element in it, somehow maybe awakens some old memories in us.
Maybe. I think the fact that it's, you don't get to see the exciting bit. All the exciting bits happen in a kiln with the lid closed. So all the kind of changes in the firing, you kind of like just open it and you're like, has it worked? Has it not worked? I don't know.
Do you have your own?
I have my own kiln, yeah. I'd like to get a bigger one day. So hopefully I can work up to that later on this year. But I think there is something that is, that connects with our soul. But this is going to sound crazy, but I think I don't know whether you're into birth charts or anything like that, but I have a lot of air and water and fire in my chart, but no earth. and I'm wondering whether that's something that helps
That's
me. It completes.
It grounds you.
Yeah,
it grounds you.
completes my puzzle.
Totally. Do you know, you have just started a conversation and it's going to be so difficult to leave apart. But we always chase the element we have less. And we do it with people. The people that will surround you intimately probably have more the element that you lack. And that's
my partner has got more Taurus in it, so I'm Gemini, and he's Gemini.
You? I love Gemini.
He has lots of Taurus elements and like his rising and stuff like that.
You are always chasing this element because you probably have a little bit of lack, but your wisdom knows that and chase that thing.
This is something I only just kind of was like, last year during the pandemic when I had lots of time to think about things. It's like, I wonder whether that's why. It's just one of those kind of inspirational moments. I was like, I've never ever
It
thought
happened
about
to
that
me
before.
with fire.
Really?
I have a lot of water, earth, and air, but I don't have much fire, even if it looks the opposite.
I would say that you have got fire.
No, but then, for example, Toby, my partner, is a fire sign. And have a lot of fire.
It's fascinating, isn't it?
It is. And I adore fire. It's just something I could look forever, and it just makes me feel so mesmerized. Mm-hmm. It's like, I feel like I have to relate to that in order to balance myself.
Well, fire in itself, it's like, I kind of, through the autumn, I started lighting a candle in the morning as soon as I got up. And it's like having company.
Yes,
there's something that's very soothing in it.
You always can use the light and the fire to kind of make a conscious decision of concentrate energy in a direction you want it to go.
That focus.
Because it allows you to have that focus and that intention. It's simple, it's easy, it's beautiful, it's wonderful, it just works. And I coming back to the sanctuary feeling you have regarding your studio. So for you, facilitating the introduction to other people, because I know you also do workshops for couples or for mixed women and men and mixed,
whoever, free for all,
free form, free spirit, freestyle.
Yeah.
And but how do you see it? It's for you a bit of a mission. Do you feel like it's more than creating objects? It's an experience. It's a ritual.
It's definitely more than an experience. Some people just come along because it's fun and it's different and it's unique. But a lot of people, I think, might not necessarily be aware at the time, but are kind of drawn to it because they're on some kind of journey of self-discovery. And I think it does, when you say, there's something quite powerful in it, it sounds ridiculous, but there really is. And the messages I've had from some people are like, I've had workshops where at the end of the workshop, myself, people kind of form connections, especially if it's an intimate group. People get quite emotional during them as well.
I guess so.
It's quite cathartic, I think. And
they probably thankful forever, and that's a very good karma you are. You are.
I haven't thought about it that way. But
you are creating there, because one thing is to produce, to be aware of what you can do, learning a practice, which would be, for example, learning ceramics. But another thing is also making a beautiful object that is going to be in your house and is going to remind you something more ideological all the time. So it's beautiful, but it's also a reminder of not having shame, for example, or having your putting on display the importance you give to self-pleasure or to pleasure.
Absolutely.
So it's all very complicated, but in a beautiful way, in an easy way,
and very nuanced as well.
Lots.
Yeah.
And the fact that you work with collaborations also, it's like creating an extra layer of contribution to the world. For example, tell me about the collaboration with these
So this is
tattoo artist.
So this is a collaboration with a tattoo artist called J Rose, who is amazing. I met her in London. She actually came to a couples workshop with her husband, who is a tattoo artist. And he's Canadian, and my partner's Canadian.
I
so
know. I thought it was they were related. They are.
No, they're not related. No,
it's just coincidence.
So they came along to a workshop, and I'd followed J Rose on Instagram, but I didn't realise when this person had booked a place for my workshop that it was the same person. I kind of opened the goods lift. I was like, "Do I follow you on Instagram?" And it turned out it did. Anyway, we started chatting. We got on really well. They stayed behind afterwards. This was in February before COVID happened, and
just before,
literally just before. It was my last workshop before COVID, and because it was Valentine's weekend, and people had come along with their partners for Valentine's Day.
Such a perfect way to celebrate,
yeah.
Of course.
And we started talking, and she studied fine art, had an interest in ceramics, worked in ceramics when she was at university in Scotland, and we were talking about how we could kind of interweave and how our work complements each other, because she's got a very feminine style as well, with the botanicals and things, and
the interest for flowers,
yeah.
and the pink in those two pieces that are in collaboration with Jay is so subtle and so I don't know. It's just very enchanting.
It's like her signature. I've actually got a tattoo by Jay. She did this for my birthday.
Is it the same flower?
The same artist.
What flower?
This is a dog rose. I think that's the same. Actually, it turns out to be the same one.
Maybe it's the same flower.
I think it is the same flower. So yeah, I really liked her style, and we spoke about doing this collaboration together. So we created 4 pieces in total, 2 dildos and 2
Do you sell, for example, these 2 through your website?
Yeah.
I cannot produce the same. I can just buy it in this case, because I can do with you a workshop, but I couldn't say I want to do the flower of Jay.
No. So these are, so I have like a library of prints that I let people choose from for a workshop.
Okay.
But the collaboration stuff is separate. So yeah, I think.
But I could buy it in any part of the world.
Yeah, I ship
everywhere.
Everywhere.
Good.
Wherever I got an order last night for Texas, and then another order for, where was the one before? Norwich. So
that's amazing. I'm curious. What parts of the world do you feel are more inclined to understand and like your pieces?
It's interesting you should say that, because now Instagram and analytics, in the day and age of big data and stuff like that, I had an equal following with the US and the UK, but in the last few months I now have more of a following in the US as my following has grown than I do in the UK, and I think
that's interesting.
Yeah, because I always kind of thought of America as being quite conservative, and it is in some respects, but there are other areas that are very, very progressive, and I think people appreciate somebody who's kind of taking a risk and pushing the boundaries. Perhaps in the UK, people are a little bit more worried about what other people think, or sticking with.
Do you think so?
Maybe, I don't know. I'm still trying to work it out. But yeah, that's really interesting for me. And I had a feature recently in Marie Claire, Taiwan, which is
that's
very
amazing.
Complex relationship with female sexuality and kind of how females present themselves in
and I am
Taiwan.
Very interested about that, because you have been featured in Marie Claire, Taiwan recently, in Wallpaper, in Hedonist, I think is the name of
Hedonist
another magazine.
Crafts magazine. That was like my big moment, because when I was at university,
I know you did a like lovely post about that article they did featuring your pieces. And what is interesting is that magazines that are maybe more oriented to conventional female content, a little bit more elegant and kind of classical, are equally interested in your products or your pieces, as other magazines or publications that are probably daring and visionary and trying to push the boundaries a
More
little bit.
alternative.
And
yeah.
that's not easy. Normally we tend to accommodate in a niche or another, but it's very difficult to cross yes, in that way, to have a wide way to communicate your intentions.
Broad appeal.
It's like a triumph. Do you feel it? Do you think that?
Well, I haven't really thought about it like that before, but I do know, I think the audience for the workshops are perhaps different to the audience for the kind of sensual tours that I make. But I do think there is some crossover. But yeah, it's interesting that you make
It
that
is
point.
interesting because it shows how versatile
Yeah.
the intention, not only the pieces, but the intention behind the pieces is always there, it's always important, and it's like well received from both possibilities, ways of look at life.
I think it took time to get to that point though, because
At the
there was
beginning
one
wasn't
point
it?
at the beginning where I was just getting these, and like, I don't get me wrong, I really appreciated the support and stuff like that, but it was very, very small, kind of super alternative publications and events and stuff like that, which is great because I don't think I would be here now doing what I'm doing if I didn't have that support. But I think it's taken a while for people need to see you around before they kind of trust you and understand what you're about, perhaps. And I think social media is kind of given me more of a space to, well, which has also been challenging because it's also trying to take it away at the same time because of the content that I create. But it's allowed me to kind of have that direct conversation with my audience where I couldn't necessarily before. It was always kind of interpreted by somebody else, you know, through publications and stuff.
When did you feel challenged socially when you introduce yourself and tell people about what you do? Did you feel there's a lot of prejudice around still?
There,
you probably have many stories. I do dildos. Really?
I used to kind of like skirt around the subject, but now I'm just like, I make porcelain pleasure
It
tools.
happened to me, you know, sometimes when I go to a cafe and I start chatting with the guy behind the bar, what do you do? Because they see you every day. At the end, they will ask. And sometimes I doubt to see I'm a life model. I work with art. And sometimes I have lie, and it's horrible.
Oh,
when
no.
you leave, and I have said I'm an art tutor or whatever, just to not give too many explanations, just to avoid an extra conversation maybe you don't want to have.
Yeah.
But that's ridiculous. Every time I do it, I'm like, what's wrong with you?
To be true to yourself. But the thing is, you also have to protect your energy as well. And if you don't think it's going to be well received, then I don't think it's...
Sometimes you just lie.
You have to, yeah.
I could say also I'm a journalist because I am, but I always, when I lie. I say
Does it become a big lie as well? And then you're like, oh
true
my
at
God,
all.
I can't go here for a coffee again. They're going to remember
you
that
don't
one.
do that. You just say
no, not
clearly,
anymore.
frontally. Are you very vocal about your beliefs?
I think so. I don't think I'm, I don't know, aggressive in the way that I, you know, talk about the philosophy behind my work and stuff like that. But somebody asked me once in an interview, like, your work isn't political, is it? But I think it is. Anything that is to do with pleasure and female sexuality is going to be political.
Of course.
So, and I think it is. I think the workshops are quite political as well, you know, depending on, I don't know.
But it's beautiful the way you don't present yourself as an activist, and at the end of the day, you do more activism than many others, and that's something I really appreciate, because the real change in the world will happen through seduction, through I sell you this product that you fall in love with. I'm not in the streets trying to this way to bring down patriarchy. It's strongest and much more effective than any other, in my opinion.
Thank you.
Because it's you engage through pleasure, through I want it, through I like it, I want one in my shell.
Entice people in, and then they're like, oh, this is what you're about.
Exactly.
It's interesting that you mentioned that, because my mum, watching my mum and how she would interact with people, she wasn't very overly, like, she's very nurturing kind of mother figure, but when someone was trying to get her attention, or she had a point to get across, she wouldn't shout, she wouldn't raise it, she would just quietly say what she had to say, and it didn't have to be a big and people listen. If you're shouting, people just like, I'd block you out. But I think it's
also,
that
if you don't
messaging.
listen, people block you out.
Yeah,
you need to listen as well.
Absolutely, yeah.
Which I don't know if I'm necessarily good at that, but I'm conscious that if you want to have a conversation, it needs to be both way. It cannot only be I want to be listened. Yes, but listen as well, no? Be
Otherwise,
active.
it's a monologue, isn't it? It's not a conversation.
Exactly. And all monologues are only good on the stage. On a stage. And you called your workshops meditations on pleasure.
No, well, the workshops are the art of pleasure, decorate a dildo, because sometimes some content gets banned, so I have to have the two kind of titles for it. But meditations on pleasure is kind of how I refer to all of my work, because I think there is a soulfulness and a spirituality to it, that it's not just about self-pleasure, it's also about mindfulness and kind of tuning into your body in the moment. So like I make other things that aren't sexual aids, like incense holders, to try and pull that together to, pleasure isn't just about sex and eroticism. I was explaining this to somebody in a workshop last year, and they were like, well, sensuality is about eroticism and sex, isn't it? And I was like, no, it's not. It can be, but predominantly for me, it's about the senses, and it's about tactility and texture, and engaging all of those kind of senses on different levels in different ways. I think
when your senses are open, stimulated, alive, it's always very intimate somehow. That's why people tend to immediately fall into the speech of sexuality, because it's true, when your skin it's alive and receiving, for example, a lovely sunny energy day, it feels good, and sex feels good, and we are so disconnected from our bodies that we think the only way we are allowed to feel good is when we are sexually active, which is completely stupid, and it's very shallow, and life is much more than that, and pleasure is much more than that. And it's true, pleasure is very political also, because we grow in societies that tells us that we can't rest, we can't enjoy things, we have to work hard, that's the only way to prove your value, and if you don't suffer, you don't deserve. All those things that are completely crazy,
really toxic
and
mindset. Yeah.
But we do believe it profoundly. So anything that works against to deconstruct that frame of mind is good, because it is a work you have to do every single day. I feel guilty when I don't do enough. I'm saying all these beautiful things, but I do suffer like anyone else.
It's
the capitalist paradigm, right?
It's difficult to swim against the current.
Exactly. And a beautiful way to start doing it is, for example, having an object that I maybe can have on display in my house, and it's a way of telling myself first and then anyone else.
So a visual reminder.
Ashamed.
Yeah.
I'm not ashamed of liking my body. I'm not ashamed of giving pleasure to my body. I'm not ashamed I did a workshop to make an object to embrace this aspect of life.
Yeah. One of the most beautiful messages I've had. I've had some actually. They always come at a time where I'm starting to question myself or having like a bit of a down week, and then I'll get some amazing feedback from somebody. But I never forget an email I got from a woman in Chile. She was in Chile, South America, and she said that she'd bought one of my pieces and it kind of challenged her when it arrived. She has a young daughter, and you know, it was a kind of act of defiance for her to buy this piece. She was a single mother and she had an 11-year-old daughter, and she had a box of sex toys, but she was like, it doesn't belong in the box of sex toys. And she said she kind of like grappled with herself over where does it go, what shall I do with it. So she put it on her shelf in her living room, and she said, what better way to have a conversation with my daughter about sex and pleasure than through a beautiful object. So,
amazing, so beautiful. I want to do your workshop. What's your favorite piece?
My favorite piece, I think my favorite piece, I always talk about it, but it's the spur. For some reason I just really connect with this shape, and for me it's very satisfying as well. It works.
I need to try it because I saw you giving an explanation and explaining that it can be used both sides. At the beginning when I saw it, I am so ignorant. I thought this was the part.
It's not ignorant. I mean, it's such an abstract object, isn't it? That it's difficult
but then
to know.
I thought this was maybe too big. And then I understood when you show how you should use it because this keeps more in place than this. This moves a lot inside.
So that's more for kind of if you want to kind of resensitize areas of the trauma, because you know you carry trauma in your body, and they do say that you carry a lot of trauma in your body. Yeah. So this is good for working out kind of pressure points inside. Yeah, which is not. I wouldn't say this is a pleasurable sensation, but it is. It will help resensitize over time. But this is designed for G-spot stimulation. So when you insert it, it just kind of sits and applies pressure on the G-spot, and kind of sits in snugly.
And how do you move it? To create stimulation.
Personal preference. So, I think pressing it down and pulling it just a little bit back and forward, just to apply additional pressure. It works for me, but you know, everybody is different.
Maybe you can also do a bit
side to side.
To side.
It's so personal though. I really struggle with being.
It looks like a pie.
It does. or a stiletto, or a sperm whale,
or those things to put your shoes. You know.
But yeah, I struggle with being too. I know some people need a kind of exactly step by step how to do something, but I think then you lose the element of exploration,
which is also very important. And this one is the one Cocolemer have in their show their shops.
Yeah.
Wow, that's such an important, in terms of importance, collaboration. How that happened? How did they get to you? Or you go?
So I've always been interested in female sexuality. I think being a repressed Catholic, maybe, and I had kind of explored different feminine undertones in my work, and I had this interest in the Madonna Hall complex, which I mentioned before, which I was just fascinated by, and also really kind of conflicted about as well. And when I went to university, I heard about Coco de Mer and what they were doing. It was founded by two sisters who wanted to kind of celebrate female sexuality. And I was like, oh my God, I need to do an internship with these people. And so I applied, but the timing didn't work out because of my finals at university. But they had seen my portfolio and they were like, will you come for a chat? We want to have a look at your portfolio and talk about some stuff. So I went in and showed my portfolio, didn't expect anything. And then a week later I had a call saying, will you work with us?
So you produce, how many pieces more or less do you have to do for them?
There were 4 pieces. There was, it was called a Coco Fest pot, and it had this bath milk, smelled like delicious coconutty kind of bath milk, which had a butterfly on the top, a gold gilt kind of butterfly, but it was 3-dimensional, so that was the handle, the butterfly was the handle, which now sounds really twee, but it was one of the first. I think I started that trend. And then there was the Remember Me dildo, which had a locket on the base, like a silver locket. That was a collaboration with a silversmith, and you could put a picture of your lover inside, and it had inscribed. It was beautiful.
So cute. I love it. That idea of the photo. I love it.
Lovers, adventurers, dreamers. That was inscribed on the bottom. And my claim to fame: Lizzie Jagger and Rafe Fiennes both own one of those. I'm reliably informed. So I remember I was in Thailand travelling with my friends, and I had a call from Coco de Mer to say, "You never guess who's just bought one of these."
Wow.
So it was very exciting.
That's exciting, yes.
Yeah, sorry, but
well, of course, it's a big brand. It's a brand very inspirational also.
Yeah. And then the dildo at the butt plug. I don't know if you with
the same flower.
Their unique print, yeah. So this is. Don't know if you can see in the centre there. Can you see the vulva?
There's a secret. You need to look. Right. It's clearly now. I see it clearly.
You'll never
now.
unsee it. It'll be there forever.
Wow. There's a vulva inside of the flower. And which flower is this?
It's a rose.
It's a rose. I thought it could be a flower that in Spanish is called clavel. I don't know in English. Oh, I'm so bad with
it's very
flower
full.
names.
It looks like it could be a peony as well. With lots and lots of petals.
It's really beautiful. The vintage sense and style.
It's very traditional.
It makes it really like a display piece. Definitely something to have around you and to create even conversation with people, of course. And my mom was very daring in that way. She would have it somewhere, not in her bedroom, somewhere really somewhere on display. And they deserve to have a special space. Some people tell you that they don't dare to use them because they are too beautiful. That would be a B-side of being too beautiful.
I think that's the one thing that makes me quite sad when people say that, like, you don't deserve this. What do you deserve? You deserve the best for you. I think as women, you're kind of lucky with what you get. I think you're taught to you need to appreciate, what you're dealt, and just, yeah. So I think it's quite challenging for some people to accept that they can use something. They can and they should use something that's beautiful and that they have a connection with. That's not just functional.
And from a safetyness point of view, what do you tell to your students? For example, I understand that they are quite heavy duty, that they last for a lifetime.
Yeah.
But also, how safe are they in terms of not toxicity?
They're non-toxic.
Okay.
So they're all food safe. So in ceramics, because it's not conventional to use ceramic for body objects, but if you can eat and drink from it, then it's safe to use.
Okay, so it's not there's no porosity.
No, although there is conflicting information about porosity, so everyone's freaking out about porosity.
Yes, please explain me, because sometimes I don't know what to say.
Because just because something is porous does not mean that it is toxic. If you care for some crystal dildos, for example, they will have you have closed porosity and open porosity. And now I'm going to get lost in all the technical details. I can't remember which means which. But as long as you care for them and you look after them, you clean them before and after you use them. Okay,
because I did a video on Yogi X and I was very excited about trying them and buying them. I got a lovely rose quartz one and another one in a stone that is really black and obsidian. I love it. It's very common in South America also, and I felt related somehow with that stone. They say the stones call you, they look for you,
yeah,
somehow, like pets, like cats.
Yeah.
And someone was saying that I shouldn't do that video because of the porosity of it. It's been proved that they are very dangerous. I use them and I haven't had any problem, but I'm not scientifically well educated enough to refuse an argument
I
like
think
that.
it's
I don't
the
know.
provenance of the stone. So sometimes with cheaper stones, if you don't know where they've come from, if it's not a reputable dealer, what they used to do is get pieces of crushed stone and bind them together with toxic glues, and that's where the problem is.
The problem,
I think quartz is non-porous, and porcelain is made from quartz, so it's a very durable material. But yeah, rose quartz is non-porous.
So we shouldn't be
I don't think
concerned at all.
I mean, people put like silicone degrades over time, and people use plastic sex toys that have got like God knows what. I think if you're using the least porous tools are ceramic, glass, some crystals, and metal.
Okay.
Everything else,
it's
which
less.
is so.
Okay, so that's important to consider. And how do you clean them normally?
Clean them with mild soap by hand. I wouldn't put them in the dishwasher because the salts in the dishwasher can...
Also, that's not very spiritual.
No. I know, I've had like, why would you want to spend that money on a
exactly
piece
the
and then put it in your dishwasher?
Cleaning, something is part of the
ceremony.
Yes,
I think so. But yeah, not so much with these pieces, but I don't know if you've ever noticed if you have a dishwasher and you put
in the past.
The salt in the detergent can wear away the surface.
At the end, after many times. Okay, and if they fall to the floor, because sometimes you have accidents on your bed, are they safe enough to survive a little accident?
It depends on the height, the trajectory, the angle, which piece will strike the floor. I've had stuff that I've dropped. I have a concrete floor in my studio and I've dropped it and it's bounced, and there's other stuff that has just hit the wrong angle and it's broken, but usually it bounces a couple of times before it breaks. So it is quite durable.
You have time to save the piece.
I did actually, something bounced the other day and I caught it and I was like, oh my god, I can't believe it survived. But they're very, I don't know if you can feel the weight of these. They're thick cast, more so than you would like I'm looking for the teacup I had earlier.
Yes. If you want, just bring it to make a comparison.
Can you feel the difference in the weight between those?
This have more weight.
Yeah, so this is cast for a long time. Usually when they cast something in a mold, they'll cast it for like 5-10 minutes. It's mass produced, so they, porcelain, people like it for its translucency and the lightness, but it also has great technical strength and high stress points. So this is thick cast for about half an hour, and then it's high fired.
So that means that you have a very heavy duty piece in your hands, even if it looks.
I mean, I've been using the same pieces since I started making them, and they've still.
And your clients, let's say people that have had them, never have had complaints about anything regarding materials or anything.
No, I had the woman in Chile was in the bathroom and she dropped it into a ceramic sink from a height when she was washing it out. But this has got, so if you see anything that has an edge or like a line, is going to be more susceptible to something than, like, if this was to strike the floor, there's less chance of because of the shape. The dome is a really strong shape. But like anything with anything with an edge, like a flat edge that's also kind of open like this, is more susceptible to.
Oh, I love these. I didn't know they were empty inside. You can leave a note.
You can leave a note. So
if you go for a travel and then, I don't know, you can leave a note inside. Like,
I was having a conversation with somebody the other day because these are hollow. You can put hot or cold water inside to change the temperature.
That's why. Okay, I understand.
But you can just run it under the tap. You don't really need to fill it with water. Somebody has told me they've filled it with warm brandy before and had it afterwards.
Why not?
Why not?
It's porcelain.
Yeah,
yes.
exactly.
That's another question. Yes, thank you for reminding me. How do you change the temperature of them to play with temperature?
So I would just run them under the tap, under the hot or cold tap. Just make sure, test it on like a sensitive part of your arm first before
in case
use
it's too hot.
Yeah, never use boiling water because that will be too hot.
But
they warm to the body. If you use it at room temperature, you'll feel like an initial chill. It's quite refreshing. It's personal.
The tendency
preference.
in a weather like in UK is to get cold. They feel cold, right?
They feel slightly cooler than ambient temperature, don't they? But they take on body temperature really quickly.
Okay.
So if you were to use them
to your own temperature quite quickly and effectively. And are you planning to do other? We didn't talk about the beautiful pieces that are to wear, and what's the idea of this? Is to use it on a phallus?
No, they're just decorative.
Cock.
They're just decorative. I'm
okay.
afraid.
It's not but
it's the fetish O-ring aesthetic.
Okay.
So
there's no utility on them.
I wouldn't say so, no. I mean, I haven't tried it.
Lack of imagination. And I would say I love them. They're beautiful. I tend to love pieces for the neck. They make you look very regal and very elegant. And at the same time,
you're more aware of your posture and how you carry yourself.
Totally. Being aware of your posture apparently is so important for your the way you feel. The way you feel in your own body, that we should pay more attention, and anything that helps should be welcome. Do you sell a lot these pieces? Are they a collaboration, you were telling me, with another artist?
They're a collaboration with a leather designer called Noyo, and we sell some of the pieces, but these are made to order, whereas I try and keep a small stock of my pieces, of the ceramic pleasure tools and things like that. So
I think I would go more for the one you are wearing right now.
The more subtle.
Yes. Because, it's less heavy, probably more versatile.
More wearable.
And also
it
more
doesn't
wearable.
Just look like a fetish choker.
And it's good for winter, but also for summer. Summer is not something I should be too worried, but I am. I'm a tropical creator. Creature. I'm a tropical creature. And in the future, what pieces are you working on or developing at the moment? Because if I'm not wrong, the process of drawing the piece and creating the piece from paper to making them an object is your favorite phase of the whole creative process.
I think so. In the beginning, for sure. So that, it depends how much time I have to be able to develop, but for making a model and so the mold and then the model, model then the mold. I hand sculpt in plaster, and then I'll cast a mold from that. So hand modeling, there's a piece I've been working on recently, and it took me a week to sculpt by hand. So it's quite a labor-intensive process, but that's the ultimate creativity there at that point where you
absolutely you concentrate there so much on your own. Also, it's quite solitary as experience, but it's also
it's like a meditation, really.
And you never know what's going to happen. Sometimes I imagine many things go wrong, or they get lost in the process.
So there might be a design that works on paper, but when you start to translate it into 3D, you're like, well, that shape doesn't really translate very well in the 3D, and so I'll think about things maybe on the profile, but maybe not have kind of fully thought out the kind of other angles or aspects of it. I'm like, have to then change it as I develop it, and it morphs into something else. But the process of actually making the porcelain pieces end to end is over the course of a week. I would say if you were to kind of squash all that time down, it would probably take just under a day per piece So it's quite an intensive process. But I do like the making.
Looks exciting. Sounds very exciting.
It's like watching paint dry sometimes.
And terrifying because it's like having a piece of paper, blank piece of paper, or a canvas, blank canvas. It's a moment of very vertiginous. How do you say it? Vertigo.
Oh, okay.
When you are going to jump from I don't know, from somewhere.
Yeah.
It's a very
anxiety-inducing,
exciting but scary moment.
Yeah, I don't know if you've ever seen that graph of the creative process, and you start out and it's like, it's gonna be amazing.
Yeah.
And then the kind of day 2, you're like,
it's
it might
horrible.
be okay. And then it's like, oh my god, this is horrible. I'm shit. It's shit. And then you kind of like, oh, this might be okay. And then at the end, it's like, yeah, I've done it. It's great.
Is it always like that? More or less? Pretty much.
Especially when you're working with plastic, because you kind of have an idea of how you're kind of working with. It's the opposite of working with clay. So you're working with something solid and then transforming it into something that has more kind of form, more sculptural. So I'll start working with a block of plaster and I'll literally carve into it to create the shape. Whereas the clay is so liquid, and like the porcelain I use is liquid porcelain, so it's so fluid and it's such a contrasting experience. I like the juxtaposition of the materials.
That part looks really mesmerizing when the porcelain is.
I love working with porcelain.
Liquid and
especially on a slow-mo. I like taking the slow-mos because you can really slow it down and appreciate the beauty of the material.
What's the best part of working only with women? Because I know you have done workshops for everyone, for couples, but also one of the recent ones was just for women or anyone that identifies as a female.
Yeah.
And I wonder if there's a particular energetic
there is a very different
atmosphere,
energy dynamic. Yeah. And I think the conversations that people have as well are far more kind of vulnerable and kind of intimate than they are in a mixed group. And I tend, mixed groups of people, when they come as couples, they don't converse so much with each other
because they know they are in a safe
experience
space.
They're sharing together. But I think when you have a group of women, the conversation then is, firing across all aspects of the table, and everybody has a conversation with somebody at some point during the session. And I like that. There's no competition. People are so focused in what they're doing. I mean, people initially might feel like there's a little element of competition there, and like, I've got to make it amazing. But then they become so absorbed in the process. There's loads of chatter at the beginning and kind of jokes and stuff like that. And you notice that there's I should time it. There's a certain point in the workshop where all of a sudden it's just silence. Like people cutting things and submerging them in water and then putting the prints on the surface, and they're just so absorbed in the process they've forgotten that they're decorating, a dildo or a butt plug, because it's just all about creating in that moment.
That's amazing. That sounds really inspiring and beautiful, that thing you are creating. And for someone that believes that art can be therapy and pleasure can be healing and sex can be sacred, it's just like the perfect experience. You are creating for yourself the experience to make all those beliefs a reality, a real experience in real life. That's beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you for this conversation, for opening up, for coming here.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
With all these beautiful pieces, and thank you for inspiring us. Thank you for staying there with us and doing this journey all together. Bye-bye. See you in the next episode of Metralla Rosa. Thank you. Can I kiss you?
Yes.
so much for staying with us this far. I hope you enjoy that. And if that's the case, I would like to suggest you to enjoy the rest of our content. Also, if you haven't done it yet, please subscribe to our channel and hit the bell so you can get notifications every time we share a new episode with all of you.